I'm in love with the record. I got to put that out there. Out in the Storm is just everything that I would have hoped for in this album.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I guess, I don't know, maybe the place to start is the album before, because I feel like a lot of albums are said to be a reaction of an artist's previous album, but it sounds like this one is maybe even more so. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as far as like my approach goes, I definitely think it is. I mean, because I made Cerulean Salt, my second record, and Ivy Trip, my last record, with the same people, so kind of like the same approach. And I knew just like as far as like making the record like and collaborating with other people, I knew I completely like wanted to go back to the drawing board and try something super different, which I did kind of in every way. But then also lyrically, I think it's pretty reactionary to the last record. I think partially just because the last one's like very abstract. It's not super like literal, and it's all like rooted in my own experiences. I feel like that's just like how I write, but I think it's kind of cloaked in a lot of metaphor, and that was like a cool challenge for me. I really wanted to write that record that way, but with this one I kind of go back to, you know, my roots, and I'm writing things that are very personal and like experience based and like very, very literal, sort of just like almost like too intimate.
Well, at one point I'd listened to the record already a few times, and I pulled out the lyric book and I decided to read it without the music on whatsoever, because you can sort of, you know, you find yourself reading along with the melody a lot of times, and I found it sort of almost reads like a book, or maybe even like I just opened a box of letters, I think is how it came across, or, you know, maybe unsent or sent, I don't know, but and I started sort of noticing those little moments in there, the repeating moments of clenched hands and walking away and running and leaving and fading. It's like, oh yeah, no, there's definitely something going on here. Did the lyrics all come sort of at the same time? Because it feels like there's, you know, that not one mood. I don't want to say it's, you know, like monotone or anything like that, but it's definitely a subject.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, as far as like subject matter goes, it's sort of the most cohesive thing I've ever made. I wrote Never Been Wrong, the first song, and Fade, the last song, kind of like earlier on, and then some time passed. I think I like went on tour and then came back and I finished it. And I think that's interesting because I think those two songs really highlight like two of the big sort of moods on the record, which I think Never Been Wrong is sort of angry and sort of confident and powerful and like a little bit messy, kind of like you're in a fight, but you're like maybe winning, but maybe also kind of fighting dirty or something. And then Fade, I think, is like sort of sad and sort of like rooted in like the actual emotion that you're feeling, which is this sort of like sadness for something to be ending. So I think that it's interesting that those are the first two, and then I kind of came back and sort of filled in the blanks or something.
Yeah, so it really is kind of set up as almost like a story arc in a way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I with the track listing, I actually let John Aniello, the producer, kind of take the reins a little bit, because I didn't have a track listing really in mind. And so I think he did a good job, and I think lyrically it sort of fits. I mean, the record really is like just different phases of like the same sort of situation, the same relationship ending, you know, kind of like, it's just sort of like different phases of that, highlighting different moments of that. So I don't think it's chronological, but it all sort of is about the same thing.
And that title, I mean, there's something to pick apart in that title in a very fun way. Out in the Storm. I kept looking at the word "in," like as in it hasn't passed yet, and the danger that represents. I mean, not speaking to your present situation, but you know, the character within the story, like that's in the middle of the entire thing.
Yeah, well, that's kind of one of the things about it that I love, is that I think that it indicates that you're in the middle of something, but that thing, that chaos that you're sort of experiencing, has an expiration date. It will end, and you will kind of come out of it eventually. So it's like hopeful in that way, which I kind of wanted the whole record to be that way, to sort of highlight the chaos and to sort of be about the chaos, but for the energy of it to sort of like indicate like that this is a moment. It's not going to last forever, and things are going to get better eventually, which is very much how I feel about breakups in general, or, you know, it's just kind of like, you're kind of at square one emotionally, but time heals it, and, you know, all that. So
yeah, it's important to remember. And when I saw that tweet or whatever by the, I can't remember who it was, the electronic guy who compared this record to Pinkerton. And I thought, as far as breakup albums go, that's like the highest compliment right there.
I know. It's so funny because it's like, Pinkerton is an album that was so hugely influential on me when I was like younger. And it's not something I was listening to actively when I made this album. But if like people hear it and hear that, I'm very flattered because I think that's obviously a classic record,
Yeah. And as we talk about the lyrics a lot, and I know that's, one of the main focus points, but I don't want to push aside the music too, because the music on it, it adds so much power to these songs. Like you've made something big out of what could have been something very simple. And I guess what I mean by that is, like when I look at the song Silver, there's almost this repetition that kind of churns along. I think repetition that would make like John Cale and Lou Reed very happy, by the way, because there's a lot of beauty in that. But, as we talk about the lyrics, were you ever going for something specific musically?
Not really. I kind of was just leaning into the melodies, and I think like on other albums I've made, I feel like I've spent so much time and been so meticulous about like what is influencing the record musically, and like, we'll just listen to so many specific things and kind of fill my brain with all these influences and like, think like, oh, I want this like synth sound on this song, or I want this drum beat on that song. And like, I really didn't do that on this album. And I worked with my live band. They recorded on the album, which is the first time I've ever done that. And I think that my live band has like such a specific sound that's different from my records. It's sort of always been a little bit bigger and like more sort of driven and powerful. And I really wanted to lean on, my drummer, Ashley Arnwine, and my bass player, Catherine Simonetti. I wanted to lean on their sort of specific styles, because they definitely have that, especially as a rhythm section together. So I think that and we tracked a lot of it live too. So I think that energy, like going into recording, I really wasn't thinking about what a difference that would make. But then as soon as we got it down, I was like, wow, this is its own thing. This has kind of become immediately sort of taken shape in a way that I didn't really anticipate. So I think that was a cool like surprise.
Well, it's all amounted to something really special. Like I said, Out on the Storm is just a great record. I love what you've done, and I love all the attention that you're getting for it too. That's always nice to see.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Katie, it's been really fun talking to you. Thanks again for taking the time today, and hopefully I'll be catching a show out on this tour.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.